My name is Emily Thompson, and this is the story of how the person I trusted the most, my own brother, turned out to be the one who despised my happiness more than anyone else. Growing up in Boston, I had always imagined my wedding day as the crown jewel of my life. I pictured the white dress, the church bells, the flowers lining the aisle, the laughter of family and friends, and the moment I would see my groom waiting for me at the altar. That vision carried me through childhood and even into adulthood, like a secret promise I had made to myself. When I met James Miller during my sophomore year of college, it felt as if that promise was finally becoming real. James wasn't just attractive. He was the kind of man who carried calm wherever he went. While I was anxious and quick to panic, he was patient and reassuring. Where I doubted myself, he reminded me of my strengths. Slowly, without me even realizing it, he became the anchor in my life. By the time he proposed to me under the autumn leaves of Boston Common, I knew with complete certainty he was the one. The weeks leading up to our wedding were a whirlwind of activity. My mother, Linda, practically lived in the kitchen, planning the menu down to the smallest detail. My father, Richard, made endless phone calls to relatives scattered across the country, updating them about flight times and hotels. My younger cousin Lily slept over at our house almost every night, insisting on helping me with my dress, my makeup, my hair, anything that made her feel like part of the excitement. Even James's family had joined the buzz, with his mother sending me long emails filled with ideas for flowers and music. Our house felt alive, as though every wall, every corner, every picture frame was humming with anticipation. And in the middle of all that joy, I felt myself glowing in a way I had never known before. For once, life was perfect, but not everyone shared that joy. My brother, Daniel, was 2 years older than me. To the outside world, he seemed to fit right into the celebration. He carried boxes of decorations into the house, cracked jokes with the groomsmen, and even went out of his way to fetch things for my parents. People constantly told me, "Emily, you're so lucky to have a brother like him. He's doing so much for your wedding." And yet, I knew the truth. When no one was looking, I saw the way his smile slipped. I caught the tension in his jaw whenever James's name was mentioned. I noticed how his hands curled into fists when I laughed too loudly. There was a sharpness in his eyes whenever they landed on me, something cold and venomous that he tried to mask, but couldn't quite hide. At first, I convinced myself I was imagining it. Weddings are stressful for everyone, right? Maybe he was just exhausted. Maybe he was just worried about all the expenses or the constant noise in the house. I told myself 100 different excuses, but deep down, I knew those weren't the answers. Daniel's bitterness wasn't new. Even as kids, I remembered moments that hinted at his jealousy. When I won a spelling bee in middle school, he broke my trophy by accident. When I was chosen for a summer music program, he mocked me in front of our cousins until I cried. My parents always brushed it off, saying, "Oh, that's just sibling rivalry." But it was more than that. Daniel seemed to hate whenever I was happy. Now, standing on the edge of the biggest day of my life, that hatred was back, stronger than ever. I'll never forget one particular evening, just a week before the wedding. I had just come home from my final dress fitting. My mom, my cousin Lily, and even James had told me I looked radiant, like a bride who was about to step into her dream. I twirled in front of the mirror, the ivory fabric flowing around me like a cloud. For a moment, I felt like I was floating. That's when I noticed Daniel standing at the doorway. His arms were crossed, his expression unreadable. Everyone else was buzzing with excitement, but he just stood there, silent. I smiled at him, trying to pull him into the moment. "Well?" I asked. "Don't I look like a bride?" He tilted his head, studying me for a long time before leaning closer. His voice was low, so low that only I could hear it above the chatter in the room. "Your happiness makes me sick, Emily," he whispered. "Do you know why? Because it reminds me of everything I'll never have. Your joy is my greatest enemy." For a moment, the world tilted. My smile froze. The laughter and music in the background blurred into static. I stared at him, waiting for the smirk that would tell me he was joking. But it never came. His eyes were stone, cold and merciless. I let out a shaky laugh, pretending I had misheard him. "Very funny, Daniel." But inside, I wasn't laughing. Inside, something cracked. Because in that moment, I realized two things. First, that my brother wasn't just jealous of me. He hated me for being happy. And second, I had no idea what he might do about it. After that night, I tried to shake Daniel's words out of my mind. Maybe he was just having a bad day. Maybe he was drunk or angry at something else. Families go through stress during weddings all the time. But the more I told myself these excuses, the more I realized I didn't believe them. Because Daniel's behavior only got worse. The very next morning, I overheard him talking to my father in the kitchen. His voice was sharp, dripping with sarcasm. "Richard, don't you think all this money could be used for something better? You're spending everything you've saved on Emily's little fairy tale wedding. What about fixing the roof? What about paying off the loans?" My father sighed, his patience already thin. "Daniel, this is your sister's wedding. It's a once-in-a-lifetime event. She deserves this day." I peeked around the corner just in time to see Daniel roll his eyes. "Deserves? She's always been the golden child, hasn't she? Everything for Emily, nothing for anyone else." The bitterness in his voice cut through me. I wanted to step in, to argue, to remind him that I hadn't asked for any of this, that Mom and Dad wanted to make my wedding special. But the way he stormed out of the kitchen, slamming the back door behind him, froze me in place. It wasn't just jealousy anymore. It was anger. Later that week, James came over to help with some of the preparations. He and Daniel ended up in the same room, untangling strings of lights for the backyard. At first, they joked around, but soon I noticed the shift. Danielle's questions grew pointed. "So James, how much are you really making at your job? Do you think you can actually provide for Emily? She's expensive, you know. What happens when the honeymoon phase ends? Still going to stick around then?" James, ever the gentleman, answered politely at first, but I could see the discomfort on his face. His voice grew tighter with every question. Finally, he set down the lights and looked Daniel squarely in the eye. "With all due respect," James said calmly, "Emily and I are building our life together. That's between us. If you're trying to test me, I promise you, there's nothing you can say that will change how I feel about her." For a moment, Daniel said nothing. Then he smirked, a cruel little twist of his lips. "We'll see." I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to beg James to ignore him. But the damage was done. The air between us was heavy, poisoned. That night, James confessed to me that he didn't understand why my brother seemed to hate him so much. "He looks at me like I've stolen something from him," James admitted. "Like marrying you is some crime I'll never be forgiven for." I didn't know how to answer, because deep down, I was starting to feel the same. As the wedding day drew nearer, small incidents piled up like cracks in glass. One morning, the flowers I had carefully chosen arrived wilted and wrongs, as though someone had changed the order. Another time, my hairstylist cancelled at the last minute, claiming she had received a rude call from a family member, telling her I didn't need her after all. And then there was the rehearsal dinner. It was supposed to be a night of laughter, a chance for both families to relax before the big day. The restaurant was decorated with candles and roses. My mom raised a toast. James's father shared a funny story. And for a while, I let myself believe everything would be okay. Then Daniel stood up. He tapped his glass, demanding everyone's attention. His smile looked polite, but his eyes burned. "I'd like to make a toast," he said. "To my dear sister Emily. She's always had everything she wanted. The trophies, the praise, the spotlight. And now she's getting her perfect wedding. And her perfect man." The room fell uncomfortably silent. My cheeks flamed with embarrassment. James reached for my hand under the table, giving it a reassuring squeeze. Daniel went on, his voice sharper with every word. So let's all raise a glass, not just to Emily's happiness, but to those of us who were left behind, who were never good enough, who had to watch from the shadows while she got it all. My father snapped, "That's enough, Daniel." But Daniel only smirked, lifted his glass, and drained it in one gulp. The tension hung in the air long after the dinner ended. Guests whispered. My mother cried quietly in the car ride home, and James kept shaking his head, as if trying to erase the whole scene from his memory. That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling, my heart heavy. Daniel's words replayed in my head like a curse. Your joy is my greatest enemy. I wanted to believe he was just jealous, that he'd calm down once the wedding was over. But deep down, I couldn't shake the fear that he was planning something more, something that could ruin everything. And I was right. The week of the wedding should have been the happiest of my life. The dress was hanging in my closet, white and perfect, ready to be worn. The venue was booked, the guest list finalized, the music rehearsed. Every box on my checklist had been ticked. On the surface, everything was falling into place. But inside, I was unraveling. Daniel's outburst at the rehearsal dinner lingered in everyone's memory. Friends and relatives pretended nothing had happened. But I could see it in their eyes. They pitied me. My parents moved through the house like ghosts, whispering arguments behind closed doors. And James, sweet James, kept asking me if I was really okay. The truth? I wasn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Daniel smirk. Every time I tried to picture myself walking down the aisle, his voice cut through. Your joy is my greatest enemy. It was like a shadow had settled over everything I loved, and no amount of light could push it away. 2 days before the wedding, the first real crack appeared. I was in the living room, writing my vows in a leather notebook James had given me, when I heard raised voices from the backyard. Curious, I stepped outside. That's when I saw them, James and Daniel, standing nose to nose near the garden fence. I don't know what your problem is, James was saying, his voice calm but strained. But if you want to attack me, do it directly. Don't sabotage the wedding. Don't hurt Emily. Daniel's laugh was cold. You really think you can protect her from me? You don't even understand what she's like. Emily's always needed the spotlight. She's always taken and left nothing for anyone else. You're just her next victim. James clenched his fist but didn't swing. I love her. That's not something you'll ever understand. Daniel's face darkened. He leaned closer, his voice a hiss. Love doesn't last, and when it breaks, I'll be right there to watch her fall apart. I gasped, the sound louder than I intended. Both of them turned. James's face softened when he saw me, but Daniel's expression hardened even more. Emily, he said flatly. Did you hear all that? I swallowed hard, my throat dry. Why are you doing this, Daniel? Why are you trying to ruin the happiest day of my life? For a moment, his mask slipped. His jaw tightened. His eyes burned with something raw and ugly. Then he spat the words that would haunt me forever. Because, Emily, your happiness is built on my misery, and I won't let you have it. He stormed past me into the house, leaving me trembling in the garden. James pulled me into his arms, whispering, "Don't listen to him. He's broken, Emily. He can't hurt us." But I wasn't so sure. The next day, small disasters piled up like clockwork. The cake delivery was mysteriously delayed. The seamstress called to say someone had phoned her, claiming I'd cancelled my alterations. Even the minister received an email, apparently from me, saying the ceremony had been postponed. Each time, the issue was fixed, but the pattern was undeniable. Someone was trying to sabotage the wedding. Someone named Daniel. I confronted my parents about it that evening. We were sitting in the dining room, the air heavy with unspoken dread. You have to talk to him, I begged. He's trying to destroy everything. He's not just jealous. He's dangerous. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Emily, he's your brother. He's struggling, but Struggling? I cut in. He threatened me, Mom. He told me he wouldn't let me be happy. How much clearer does it need to be? My father rubbed his temples. Exhaustion etched into every line of his face. I'll handle it, he muttered. But for now, let's just get through the wedding. One day, just one day of peace. I wanted to scream. Peace was impossible with Daniel lurking in the shadows. That night, I locked my bedroom door for the first time in years. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, clutching my vows to my chest like a shield. Every creak of the house made my heart race. Every gust of wind felt like a warning. And then came the wedding day. The morning sun filtered through the curtains, warm and golden, but it didn't calm me. I dressed in silence, my bridesmaids fussing around me, their laughter sounding distant and hollow. My mother kissed my forehead, whispering, "You look beautiful, sweetheart." My father hugged me tightly, his eyes suspiciously bright. Everything was set. The guests were arriving. James was waiting at the altar. The music was playing, but in the back of my mind, one thought pulsed like a drumbeat. Where is Daniel? I hadn't seen him all morning. No one had. As I stood at the entrance of the church, my arm linked with my father's, my heart pounded louder than the organ music. The doors opened, the guests rose, and all I could think was Daniel inside, watching me? Was he waiting to strike? I stepped forward, my smile fixed, my eyes scanning the crowd. For a brief moment, everything seemed normal, beautiful even. James stood at the altar, his eyes filled with love, his smile steady and strong. And then, just as I reached the halfway point of the aisle, I saw him, Daniel, standing in the back of the church. His eyes locked on mine. His lips curled into a smile that wasn't joy. It was triumph. In that instant, I knew my brother wasn't done. Not yet. And whatever he was planning, it was about to happen. The church was hushed. The only sound the steady rise and fall of the organ music. My father's hand pressed firmly against mine as we walked forward, step by step, down the long red aisle. I should have been trembling with joy, but all I could feel was the icy weight of Daniel's stare burning into my back. Half the guests didn't even notice him. To them, he was just another latecomer standing at the back. But to me, he was a storm cloud looming over a perfect summer day. His smile, it wasn't the smile of a proud brother. It was the smile of someone who knew exactly how to ruin me. I tried to shake it off, focusing instead on James. He stood at the altar, his face glowing with love and relief as he saw me approaching. For a moment, the world shrank to just us. And I thought maybe, just maybe, we could get through this. But then, halfway through the ceremony, Daniel made his move. The minister had just asked James to recite his vows when the heavy church doors banged open. Daniel didn't just walk forward. He stormed down the aisle, his shoes echoing against the marble floor, his voice rising above the sacred quiet. "Stop this wedding!" Gasps filled the room. Heads turned. The organist faltered mid-note. My father's arm stiffened at my side, and James froze, his vows dying on his lips. The minister blinked in shock. "Sir, please, this is highly inappropriate." But Daniel cut him off. "You all need to hear the truth before this farce goes any further." His eyes blazed as they locked onto me. "Emily isn't who you think she is. She's not this perfect bride. She's a liar. She's a manipulator. She's been destroying this family for years. And now she's about to destroy yours too, James." The words hit me like knives. The guests erupted into whispers, their faces turning toward me with wide, questioning eyes. My cheeks burned. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear over it. James stepped forward, his jaw tight, his voice steady. "Daniel, that's enough. This isn't your wedding. This isn't your life." But Daniel wasn't finished. He pulled a crumpled envelope from his pocket and waved it like a weapon. "Do you want proof? Here, letters, journals, everything I've kept since we were kids. Emily has always taken everything from me. Our parents' attention, my chances at a future, even the family business that was supposed to be mine. And now she's stolen you too. He tore one of the pages free and read aloud. Daniel is weak. Daniel will never stand on his own 2 feet. Sound familiar, Emily? That's your handwriting. I staggered back as if struck. I had written those words years ago in a private diary I thought no one had ever seen. But I hadn't meant for them to be cruel. I was just a frustrated teenager, venting after yet another fight. And now, my brother was using them to paint me as a monster. The crowd gasped again. My bridesmaids exchanged panicked glances. My mother covered her mouth with shaking hands. My father tried to speak but couldn't find the words. "Daniel!" I cried, my voice breaking. Those were childish words, written in anger. You've been holding on to them all these years. Why? Because they're the truth, he roared. You think you deserve happiness. You don't. Not after what you've done to me. I won't let you take everything. The minister tried to regain control. Sir, you need to leave before we call security. But Daniel shoved past him, his face red, his fists clenched. He reached the altar and pointed at James. And you. You're a fool if you think she'll make you happy. She'll chew you up and spit you out like she did with everyone else. She'll ruin you. The room was chaos now. Guests were standing, murmuring, some even edging toward the exits. The tension was unbearable, a living, breathing thing pressing against my chest. Then James did something I'll never forget. He walked calmly down the steps of the altar until he was standing face to face with Daniel. His voice, though quiet, carried across the entire church. You're wrong. Daniel blinked, thrown off by the steadiness in James's eyes. I know Emily better than anyone, James continued. I know her fears, her flaws, her regrets. I know she isn't perfect, but that's exactly why I love her. Because she's real. Because she's strong enough to admit when she's wrong. And because she's brave enough to stand up for the life she deserves. He turned to me, his eyes soft. Emily, I don't care what's in those pages. I know the woman standing in front of me today, and she's the woman I want to marry. Tears blurred my vision. My heart swelled, aching with gratitude. But Daniel wasn't moved. His face twisted with fury. You'll regret this, James. You'll both regret this. You think love can save you. Love is a lie. It won't last. And with that, he hurled the bundle of papers into the air. Pages fluttered down like snowflakes, scattering across the aisle, drifting into guest laps, landing on pews. The sight was surreal, almost beautiful, even as my life was being torn apart. Before anyone could stop him, Daniel turned and stormed out of the church. The heavy doors slammed shut behind him with a thunderous boom. For a long moment, silence reigned. The guests shifted uneasily, unsure whether the ceremony was over or if it could even continue. My father cleared his throat, his voice shaking but firm. The wedding goes on. The minister hesitated, then nodded. James took my hands, his grip warm and steady, anchoring me in the storm. Emily, he whispered, do you still want this? My lips trembled, but my answer was clear. More than ever. And so, with pages of my past scattered around us like fallen leaves, we said our vows. We exchanged rings. We kissed as husband and wife. The guests applauded, but the joy was muted, shadowed by what had just happened. Even in that moment of triumph, I knew Daniel hadn't disappeared from my life, because when I glanced at the back of the church, I swore I saw him again, standing outside the stained glass windows, his silhouette dark and still, watching and waiting. After the wedding, people tried to pretend nothing had happened. The reception went on. The music played, and guests raised their glasses with forced smiles. But behind the laughter, there was an uneasiness in the air. Like everyone was waiting for Daniel to burst back through the doors at any moment. James tried his best to shield me from it. He danced with me, made jokes, whispered sweet promises about our future. And for brief moments, I managed to lose myself in his arms. But every time I looked around the room, I caught someone whispering behind a hand or glancing nervously toward the exits. Daniel's outburst had left its mark. That night, when James and I finally returned to the small apartment we had rented before leaving for our honeymoon, I broke down in tears. "I ruined it," I sobbed, still in my wedding dress. "He ruined it. Our perfect day. It'll always be remembered for what Daniel did." James pulled me close, pressing my head against his chest. "Emily, listen to me. Daniel doesn't get to define our marriage. He doesn't get to control how we remember this day. You are my wife now, and nothing he does can change that." His words comforted me, but deep inside, a seed of fear had already been planted. We were supposed to fly to Hawaii the next morning for our honeymoon. I had imagined white sand beaches, sunsets over the ocean, the first real adventure of our life together. But when we arrived at the airport, something strange happened. At the check-in counter, the airline clerk frowned at our passports. "I'm sorry," she said, tapping at her computer. "There's an issue with your booking. It's been cancelled." "Cancelled?" James repeated, confused. "That's impossible. I confirmed the tickets last week." The clerk shook her head. "The reservation was cancelled online yesterday. The refund was processed to a Daniel Thompson." My blood ran cold. "That's my brother," I whispered. The clerk looked apologetic. "I'm afraid there's nothing I can do. If you'd like to purchase new tickets." James squeezed my hand, anger flashing in his eyes. "We'll handle it, thank you." We walked away from the counter in silence. My stomach churned. He hadn't just embarrassed me at my wedding. He was actively sabotaging my life. "James," I whispered, my throat tight. "He's not going to stop." James set his jaw. "Then we'll make him stop." Instead of Hawaii, we ended up driving to a small coastal town in Maine for a few days, hoping to salvage some kind of honeymoon. The place was quiet, the ocean winds salty and sharp, and for a while, we managed to breathe again. But even there, Daniel's shadow found us. On the second night, we returned to our rented cottage after dinner. The door was unlocked. I was sure I had locked it when we left. Inside, nothing seemed stolen, but the air felt wrong, disturbed. A glass sat broken on the kitchen floor. Our suitcases had been unzipped, clothes tossed about, and on the bed lay a single page from my old diary, written in my own teenage handwriting. "Daniel doesn't deserve love." My legs gave out beneath me. James caught me just before I hit the floor. "He was here," I whispered, my voice shaking. "James, he was in this room." James grabbed his phone immediately, calling the local police. Officers arrived, took statements, and promised to investigate, but I could see it in their eyes. They thought it was a petty family feud, not something dangerous. They didn't understand Daniel like I did. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the house made my heart race. I kept expecting to see his face in the window, his shadow across the room. When we returned home, the harassment escalated. Emails flooded my inbox from fake accounts, all filled with cruel messages. "James will leave you. You'll end up alone. You don't deserve happiness." At work, my colleagues whispered about rumors that I had cheated on James before the wedding, rumors I knew Daniel had planted. Even our landlord received anonymous complaints, accusing us of domestic fights that never happened. One evening, we came home to find an eviction notice taped to our door. James was furious. "This is insane. He's destroying our lives, piece by piece." I sat on the couch, trembling, my hands buried in my lap. "It's not just about ruining our lives, James. It's about control. Daniel doesn't want me to be happy, because he isn't happy. My happiness is like poison to him." James knelt in front of me, taking my face in his hands. Then we fight back. We gather evidence. We show the police, a lawyer, anyone who will listen. "He won't win, Emily. I won't let him." His determination gave me hope, but my fear only deepened, because deep down, I knew Daniel wasn't just playing games anymore. He was preparing for something bigger. One evening, As James and I were cleaning up after dinner, my phone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number. I hesitated, then opened it. It was a photo of me, taken through our living room window. The message beneath it read, "You can't hide from me. Not now. Not ever." The phone slipped from my hands and clattered to the floor. James rushed over, picked it up, and froze when he saw the screen. His face drained of color. "He's watching us," I whispered, tears blurring my vision. "James, he's right outside." James pulled me into his arms, but his eyes were fixed on the window, on the dark street beyond, and in that moment, I knew my brother wasn't just jealous. He was dangerous, and our fight for a normal life had only just begun. For weeks, Daniel haunted us like a ghost. Every shadow outside our window felt like him. Every knock at the door made my chest seize. We lived in constant fear. Our once bright home turned into a cage. James tried to be my shield. He installed cameras, changed the locks, filed police reports. But Daniel was always a step ahead. Never enough evidence. Never enough proof to hold him. He knew exactly how to make me feel hunted without leaving fingerprints behind. I began to dread the evenings most. That was when the silence of our apartment grew heavy, when the world outside seemed to disappear, and the thought of Daniel lurking in the dark became unbearable. One night, I woke to the sound of glass shattering. My heart leapt into my throat. James jumped from bed, grabbing the baseball bat he kept nearby. "Stay here," he ordered, but I couldn't. I crept behind him as he moved through the hallway. Every step slow, tense. We reached the living room. The window had been smashed open, shards glittering across the floor. The curtains billowed with the night air, and then from the shadows a voice, low, cold, familiar. "You should have listened to me, Emily." Daniel stepped into the dim light, his eyes wild, his face twisted with rage. He looked nothing like the brother I grew up with. He looked like a stranger wearing his skin. James raised the bat, his voice steady. "Get out, right now, or I swear..." Daniel laughed, a hollow, chilling sound. "What will you do, James? Protect her? You don't even know who she really is. She's been lying to you from the start." "Enough!" I cried, stepping forward. "Stop this, Daniel. This isn't about me. It's about you. You can't stand to see anyone happy because you're not. That's not my fault." His gaze snapped to me, burning with fury. "Not your fault. You ruined me, Emily. Every opportunity, every chance I ever had, you stole it. And now you've stolen him too." He jabbed a finger at James. "I won't let you take everything." James moved in front of me, blocking Daniel's advance. "She didn't steal anything from you. You've poisoned your own life with jealousy. You're destroying yourself, Daniel." For a moment, I thought James's words might reach him. But then Daniel pulled something from his jacket, a knife. My breath caught. "Daniel, no," I whispered. He pointed the blade toward James. "Step aside. She and I have unfinished business." James stood his ground. "You'll go through me first." The room pulsed with terror. My brother, the boy who once held my hand when I scraped my knee, the teenager who used to chase fireflies with me in our backyard, now stood before me as a man ready to kill. Tears blurred my vision. "Daniel, please, look at yourself. Look at what you've become. This isn't you. This is your pain talking, your bitterness. Put it down, please, for me." For a flicker of a second, I saw hesitation in his eyes. The knife trembled in his hand, but then his rage swallowed it whole. With a roar, he lunged. Everything happened in a blur. James swung the bat. The knife clattered to the floor. Daniel stumbled, crashing against the coffee table, papers and glass scattering everywhere. I screamed, rushing forward as James pinned him down. "Call the police!" James shouted. I fumbled for the phone, my hand shaking so badly I almost dropped it. My voice cracked as I gave the dispatcher our address, my words tumbling over each other in panic. Within minutes, though it felt like hours, sirens wailed in the distance. Blue and red lights flooded our street. Officers stormed inside, pulling Daniel away, cuffing his wrists as he shouted and thrashed. His eyes found mine one last time as they dragged him out. "You'll regret this, Emily. You'll never be free of me." And then he was gone. The days that followed were a blur of statements, hearings, and restraining orders. The court finally recognized Daniel as a danger. He was ordered into custody, facing charges for breaking and entering, harassment, and attempted assault. For the first time in months, I could breathe. Yet the relief was tangled with grief. Daniel was my brother. A part of me still remembered the boy who used to protect me from bullies, who shared secrets with me under the covers when we were kids. Losing him to his own darkness felt like mourning someone who was still alive. One evening, as James and I sat on our balcony watching the sunset, he took my hand. "You did everything you could for him," he said gently. "But his choices aren't yours to carry. You chose love. He chose hate. That's the difference." Tears slipped down my cheeks, but I nodded. For the first time, I began to believe him, because as painful as it was, I realized Daniel's hatred didn't define me. His bitterness wasn't my burden. My life, my happiness, my marriage, they were still mine to claim. Months later, James and I finally took that honeymoon. Not to Hawaii. Life had changed too much for that. Instead, we went to a quiet cabin by a lake in Vermont. The water was calm, the air crisp, and for the first time since our wedding, I felt peace. One evening, as we sat by the fire, James wrapped his arm around me and whispered, "We made it, Emily. Together." I rested my head against his shoulder, watching the flames dance, and I knew he was right. Daniel's shadow might linger in memory, but it no longer controlled me. I had survived. I had chosen love. And in the end, love had won.